This conference will now be recorded.
Hey everybody, it's Dr. Doug Smith. It should be Tuesday at 2:30, but it's Tuesday at 2:49. We had a heck of a time getting the meeting to launch today. I don't know if it's a hardware issue, a software issue, but we're going to have to. I'm assuming the problem's my phone. It's just getting so old. I might actually convert over to using my my desktop and seeing if we continue to have problems, because I've got a great internet connection. So anyway, we're here. Let's get started. So last week we read 4 excerpts from the book, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4, and today we're looking at chapter 5. Now, chapter 5 is really asking the question, why in the heck would you trust a psychiatrist? Okay, and looking at their history. Okay, I'm old enough to remember when homosexuality was listed in DSM, Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is where opioid addiction and opioid use disorder are listed. Well, homosexuality was one of their previous diagnoses, just like opioid addiction is a diagnosis. Okay, and I'm old enough to remember what were called the refrigerator moms. Those were the parents, particularly the mothers, of children born with autism. And the psychiatrist said it was because the mothers were cold, the mothers were frigid. That's why your child has autism. It's your fault, you the mom. And they were wrong. They were wrong about homosexuality. They were wrong about autism. They were wrong about the refrigerator moms. Okay, I'm old enough to remember those ridiculous transsphenoidal frontal lobotomies. Okay, a whole bunch of which were done to cure homosexuality. Okay, the whole point being, there's no reason to trust these people. There is no reason to trust a psychiatrist. Okay, they're not scientific. They've been wrong a whole bunch, and they're wrong again on this. Okay, they've done a lot of damage in the past. They've hurt a lot of people. Okay, that thing with the refrigerator moms, blaming the parents for the children born with autism, that hurt a lot of people. Okay, telling homosexuals that they're mentally ill. Okay, that hurt a lot of people. Okay, telling people they had opioid addiction, that hurt a lot of people. A lot of people, killed a lot of people. Okay, telling people they needed a frontal lobotomy, that devastated a whole bunch of people. So the point is, why would you even trust these idiots? Okay, they haven't earned your trust, that's for sure. So let me read this excerpt from chapter 5. Chapter 5, a brief history of the failures of psychiatry. And here's the excerpt. Here's the quote. Perhaps Aldous Huxley said it best with, and I quote, "Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored." End of quote. Facts do not cease to exist because they are ignored. The adrenaline toxicity that these genetically damaged people undergo is real and ultimately non-survivable. And just because the CDC, the FDA, the HHS, psychiatrists, the pharmaceutical companies, and others ignore the adrenaline toxicity, it never went away. And it has killed millions. We are down to a fraction of the people left. And the death rate continues daily. So my point with chapter 5 is, these people haven't earned your trust. Why would you trust them? Why would you trust a diagnosis of opioid addiction? Especially when you learn there's no science behind it. Okay, and in labeling millions of people as an opioid addict, labeling millions of people as having a mental health disorder, labeling millions of people with opioid addiction, opioid use disorder. Okay, you're ignoring the real diagnosis. You're ignoring the genetic damage, and you're ignoring the adrenaline toxicity that these people experience when they go into withdrawal. What most people call withdrawal, what we call the signature disease. But what Aldous Huxley is saying here is, hey, just because you ignore it, it isn't going away. You can ignore facts all you want to, but they're not going away. And that's what we're saying here. You can ignore the adrenaline toxicity, but it's not going away. It'll still kill a whole bunch of people. You could ignore it, but it's not going away. So that's the quote from chapter 5. I hope everybody knows that the reason we're doing this book, well, first off, we want the information out there, but it's time to file the mass tort lawsuits. Okay, what these companies did to you, what these people did to you, is wrong morally, wrong ethically, and wrong legally. And so far, they've gotten away with it. Okay, they've hidden behind the psychiatrist, okay, who just love the money, love the prestige, fancy cars, fancy clothes, fancy titles. Oh my gosh, fancy titles. They get to play the expert. They get to pretend they're the expert. I mean, if anybody needs a psychiatrist, it's a psychiatrist. Okay, but they're wrong. And the point of chapter 5 is this isn't the first time they've been wrong. They've been wrong about a whole lot of stuff. And the reason that they're wrong about a whole lot of stuff is because they're just flat out not scientific. I'm finishing up the last chapter, which feels good. I'm excited about the book. I like the book. I like reading the book. I hope you guys are going to like reading the book too, but I like reading it. Makes sense to me. I think the author did a pretty good job. Pat myself on the back there. And as you're reading the book, and as you're reading the last chapter, the last chapter is reserved for me. I get to put down my opinion. What do I think happened? Okay, not just the science. Okay, the rest of the chapters are devoted to the science. Last chapters, that's my opportunity to say, here's what I think happened. And I lay the fault for the origins of the opioid crisis squarely on the shoulders of Johnson & Johnson and the DEA. Squarely. Okay, there were treaties in place to make sure we never got a warehouse full of oxycodone, a warehouse full of morphine, a warehouse full of anything. And Johnson & Johnson found a loophole in the treaties and exploited it. And before you know it, in the mid-90s, here we are with a massive warehouse full of oxycodone. I'm going to sell that to somebody. That's what Johnson & Johnson does. They sell drugs. They sell pharmaceuticals. Got a warehouse full of oxycodone. We're going to sell it to somebody. Hey, look at this company over here, Purdue. They got a new product called OxyContin. And oh, by the way, we get to set the dosages. And this is why I'm going down this rabbit hole. Okay, the psychiatrists at this point are in charge of this division of the FDA. Okay, now it's time to set the dosages for OxyContin. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going through and looking for the science behind the dosages. Okay, why was it 20, 40, 80, 160? Why were those the dosages? What was the justification for the dosages? What was the science? And what I'm finding out is, dude, there wasn't any science. How can there not be any science? Oh, that's right. They're psychiatrists. They don't use science. They use pseudoscience. The dosage is whatever they say it is. Okay, and up until that point in time, Percocet 2.5, Percocet 5, that's oxycodone 2.5, oxycodone 5. It's going to take you a long time to empty out that warehouse full of oxycodone when all you're doing is moving 2.5 and 5. That's going to take you a long time to empty out that warehouse. Okay, but you up those dosages to get away from the 2.5 milligrams to 5 milligrams. Let's go 20, 40, 80, 160. Now you can move some oxycodone. Okay, and how do they justify those dosages? Because the psychiatrist said it was okay. That's why. The psychiatrist said it was okay. Okay, that's the justification behind the dosages. There really was no justification. They just wanted to move oxycodone. Problem was those levels were so high that it very rapidly did genetic damage. Very rapidly did genetic damage. Okay, in fact, what happened was dosages were so high that it overwhelmed the body's ability to metabolize the oxycodone. So now it's like a continuous exposure. Okay, and anytime you're continuously exposed to a toxin, I call it a blowtorch. And that's what happens. If you're listening to me right now and you took OxyContin, like a lot of people did, you took that, 20 milligrams 2 or 3 times a day, 40 milligrams 2 or 3 times a day, 80 milligrams, whatever you were taking, you were in essence pointing a blowtorch right straight at your DNA. Okay, because your body was never able to keep up with metabolism. So that oxycodone was pounding on that DNA nonstop, 24 hours a day. It's like a blowtorch, and it didn't take long at all. Okay, probably less than a month for some people. Didn't take long at all to with that blowtorch just blowing on that DNA before the genetic damage reached a point where when you tried to stop taking the opioids, here comes the signature disease. Here comes the sickness. Okay, didn't take long at all. Why didn't it take long at all? Because you were shooting a blowtorch right at your DNA. Why was it a blowtorch right at your DNA? Because when you start getting into 40, 60, 80 milligrams a day of oxycodone and higher, your body can't metabolize it, so it becomes a continuous exposure. And in the world of toxicology, continuous exposure is a really bad thing. Okay, and the FDA should have picked up on that. The FDA should have picked up on that. It's what their job is. Okay, and quite frankly, if I can figure it out, then wasn't that hard to figure out? The FDA should have picked up on that, but they didn't. Why not? Because it's a psychiatrist. What I'm talking about here is science. They don't use science. They use pseudoscience. It's whatever they say. Okay, what's the appropriate dosage? It's whatever I say. What's depression? It's whatever I say. What does an antidepressant do? Whatever I say. That's the world of the psychiatrist. It's whatever I say. Okay, why do I have opioid addiction? Because I said so. Why do I have opioid use disorder? Because I said so. Okay, can you show me any proof of that? Nope, don't need proof. I'm a psychiatrist. That's the only proof you need. I say it, it's true. That's how they work. It's just an opinion. It's no different from a horoscope. Try arguing with somebody about a horoscope, or go have your palm read. Go have your future read by a psychic, and then argue with them. No, I think you're wrong. Okay, that's the equivalent of arguing with a psychiatrist. Anyway, I am long-winded today. I am over time. Please post. Don't forget to like and subscribe to us. Post this podcast on your social media, everybody else's social media. Hey, we're looking for the first group to be the first mass tort lawsuits. Get on board with us. Email me. Tell me you want on board. I'm starting to get quite a few emails, people that say, hey, I want to be in the first wave of lawsuits. And all we're asking you to do is hey, sell 20 books. That's all we're asking you to do. Just sell 20 books. Speaking of books, Alex, I'm going to try and get chapter 2 uploaded and over to you today, so you can get it uploaded to the editors. Everybody have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow, hopefully at 2:30. Bye-bye now.